Hey, Baer, back on the show. We last had you on 5 years ago. You are a Titan, a lovely man, good friend, and you've written this wonderful little book, but big in power, called Time to Win. In your own words, Jay, for those who don't know you, who is Jay Baer?
Thanks for the opportunity to be back on the show. I can't believe it's been 5 years. That astonishes me. Always good to see you. I am a business growth and customer experience researcher, author, expert, and advisor. I've been doing these things for some 3 decades. I started in digital marketing in particular when domain names were still free. So I started very early and have had a series of global professional services firms helping the world's most interesting companies level up in the eyes of their customers. And now I spend most of my time writing, giving presentations, and advising the world on the best tequilas they should drink.
Hopefully, we're going to slip some tequila talk in there in a moment.
Can do.
Um, the idea of naming or branding and the URL,
Mhm.
obviously, when you write books, are you, to what extent are you looking at the .coms or the .cos or whatever URLs when you write a book? Is time to win .com a part of finding it? That's the title I want, or is it something sort of anecdotal?
Great question. And a lot of my books are sort of snappy titles like that: Talk Triggers, Hug Your Haters, etc. So usually that is the second piece. So first piece is, what is the actual premise? What is the advice that I'm trying to impart to readers in this sort of 2 to 3 year period? Is sort of how I think about it. I'm not a futurist. I'm not a genius like you. I am just somebody who can translate the near future to the present day, and I recognize patterns really well. So what I try to do is find a pattern that business people can use to outperform their competitors over a defined time horizon, which is why I've written books about social media and content marketing and social business and customer service, et cetera. But all of those things have already happened now. People did the things that I advised. And so now it's always, what's the next thing that I can explain to somebody that they should do that maybe they haven't thought yet, that they can capitalize upon for a window of 24 to 36 months. So I start with the idea, and it's usually recognizing a pattern. And I have a very specific reason why I came up with this idea. And then once I sort of have the premise, I'll come up with some very terrible, vague, not usable title ideas, and I'll just sort of let that soak around in my head until I come up with the title. And then, of course, as you as you point out, then it's the mad dash to domain registry to hope that something is available.
The time slash or time hyphen to hyphen win.
Right,
All right,
exactly. Yeah, time to
whatever's out there.
win.ly. Yeah, you really start to but we're lucky. This is the time to win.com, so we got lucky with it.
I did want to just harken back to your hug your haters, and something that I feel is ironically also useful is hug your lovers.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
It feels like there's so much loneliness out there, that there's so much fear out there, and contact and actually physical moments. We've forgotten the art of hugging.
No doubt, both metaphorically and actually. I think that's very true. And you know this well. You see the artificial empathy right behind you. We unfortunately live in an era of empathy deficit, and I've talked about this before. Like, so I come from a very long line of entrepreneurs and small business owners. My family's been self-employed directly straight through since like 1842 or something, and
Love
and
that.
it's crazy. I'm a seventh generation entrepreneur. My son is,
Founded in 1842
yeah,
doesn't sound
exactly.
entrepreneurial. You know what I mean?
No, I know exactly. It's a series of businesses. But I, in my whole life, never had a conversation with my dad or my grandfather, both now since passed, about treating uh, either friends or customers or associates or family with dignity and respect and kindness and love. Never a single conversation, because it wasn't a conversation that you ever had to have. It was de facto. it was assumed, and I don't think just in my family, I think in most families, but somewhere along the way, we kind of lost our way. And now we're in this empathy deficit period, which makes me very sad as a human being. And I think you as well. But I will say, as a business strategist, it's a huge opportunity because customers expect to be treated so shabbily now that if you just do a modicum of anything, right, it stands out like crazy. You get so much extra credit for being 1% above mediocre in terms of your empathy level that it's a huge opportunity.
All right. Well, I would like to just lean into that in a moment for as in why is it that companies don't do that? I mean, how is it that we've gotten to a position where commercially, supposedly viable businesses only can spare a modicum of time to do the strict minimum? I mean, how is it that they've lost the plot? What is it that's pushed them off the right north?
I mean, I think it's praying at the altar of efficiency. I mean, almost by definition, true empathy is circumstantial, right? Because the definition of empathy
Contextual.
is, yeah, it's understanding and sharing the feelings of another person. That's the actual definition of empathy, and so that is absolutely driven by the person that you're interacting with and what their situation is at that time. And so it's very difficult to say this is exactly how we're going to handle all the things all the times when those things and the people necessarily change. And so it does potentially cost more time, more human capital resources to be empathetic, and you can't document a process and a procedure as tightly as perhaps some organizations would want. And then there's a larger sort of Western business culture problem, which I wrote about a few times, which is this idea that service, customer service, client service, any sort of service line item is typically viewed as a cost, not as an investment. And so those costs want to be shaved and reduced, not invested in. But what's hilarious about that is, you well know, the documentation on the ROI of high levels of service and the ROI of disproportionate empathy is almost inarguable. And so the case studies are there, the numbers are there, but yet ultimately, when it comes down to spreadsheets, people say, well, how can we save money on service?
Well, the thing about service, oftentimes, I think, is that there are humans involved,
Yeah,
and humans are
for now.
messy people, right? At least there, at the very minimum, there's service. There are people behind the keyboards providing the service. Maybe in the future it'll all be AI, but the idea of empathy, love. I mean, in my business, we had this unofficial title of a woman called the director of love. And can you imagine going to some rational CEO and saying, well, I want to hire a director of love?
Yeah,
What is the IRA, RI of that?
yeah,
And
yeah.
screw you, get with the program. Let's go with efficiencies. And it doesn't seem like we have time for love. We don't have time for empathy or listening or relationships.
Yeah, that's the tricky part about this new work, The Time to Win, is that efficiency can be the enemy of empathy, but it doesn't have to be. And that's one of the things I try and point out in the book and in the public presentation surrounding this work is that, yes, the data is very clear on this. People care about their time more than ever. They want things faster. That's not going to change. I really don't foresee a period of time where people say, you know what, I've been thinking, and I think next time, why don't you just do that more slowly? I just don't see that as a practical scenario, and so consequently, we've got to lean into to responsiveness as really a way to separate our businesses from competitors. But and you raise a really smart point. We've got to be able to do it in a way that customers still feel some kind of connection to the brand.
Mm.
Because if they don't, then that differentiation will be lost as quickly as it's won.
So I want to get to time later for the bulk of what we talk about, but you wrote to win. And it made me think about actually what is success, and how do you evaluate the winning part
Yeah.
as opposed to the time part?
Yeah, great question. What we've found, not just in my research, but in the research of others, is that experience is now the primary decision tree that people use when they buy goods and services. That product differentiation and even price differentiation has been reduced in importance, and experiential differentiation is what often carries the day, and that can take many forms in many contexts. And so when we say the time to win, it's almost a double meaning there. Number one, obviously, it is about time and about responsiveness, but increasingly, if you are the fastest in your category, that will yield disproportionately positive business outcomes, both in net new customer acquisition and in customer retention and churn reduction. And the documentation on that's in the book and is pretty clear. So you can meaningfully outperform competitors if you are the fastest in your category. But as I mentioned earlier, you can't do that forever, because every single thing, and I say this with as much modesty as possible, everything that contained in this book is going to happen. Everybody is going to do it. Every recommendation in there you're going to do, because eventually you won't have a choice. Customers will simply demand it of you. So the choice is pretty clear today. You can either start on this now and lean into speed as a competitive differentiator and outperform competitors who will wait, or you can wait and then be the laggards that have to figure out how to catch up 2 years from now. And so the businesses that are like, yes, I get it. Companies like Lemonade, for example, the insurance organization that's AI powered, that processes claims in a matter of seconds, the most profitable insurance company in the U.S., highest average revenue per employee, highest customer satisfaction ratings. Their whole company is built on speed, right? They have already figured it out. So it is simply a choice, but it's a choice that you won't have much longer because you'll just be forced to do it.
You write, and I think it's the choice between fast, best, and cheapest.
Yeah.
Isn't it something
Yes.
along
Yeah. Good.
those
Good.
lines?
Fast. Cheap is how we say it in the U.S. Yep.
Good, fast, cheap, and you can only take two.
Yeah.
But it feels like fast is becoming the sine qua non.
Yeah. Yeah. You can be fast and good, or you can be fast and inexpensive, but you better be fast. That one is becoming non-negotiable.
Right. Well, so um, things like taking care of people's time, being a steward of their time, but also being aware of their expectations or setting expectations. Because I mean, as much as we might be in milli whatever split moments of a second in certain latencies and technologies, if we set up for always being the fastest, the
Yeah.
split second, like a trader who's trying to say, well, I have the least latency on my
Yeah.
bandwidth. Someone's gonna go faster, or maybe your system will fail, and it feels like it's gonna always have to teeter on a razor blade
Yeah.
the long-term success when
Yeah.
fast is your supposed competitive advantage.
So I think there's two pieces to that. One is the setting of expectations. And what we found in the research for this book and then subsequent work once it was published is that the delivery of responsiveness versus expectations for customers is actually more important than the raw speed. So being slightly faster than they anticipate is more important than being 10 minutes faster. The key to that, though, is knowing what they anticipate, right? Because if you don't set speed expectations, so many things now are so fast in a way that they didn't used to be. I mean, Amazon's a perfect example. Um, that if you don't tell people how long it should take, they will assume it can be milliseconds. because in many other parts of their life, it is. I'll tell you a funny story about that. So, my friend Don is an airline pilot, and he's so great at this idea of sort of under promising and over delivering with responsiveness. So when he gets in his headset, right, and air traffic control says, oh, there's a plane behind you, you can't back out of the gate, we expect a 12-minute delay. So he gets on the intercom and says, hey, it's Captain Don, welcome to flight Phoenix to Philadelphia. There's a plane behind us. Air traffic control says it's going to be a 15-minute delay. Right? He always increases it, right? And then when they get back on, okay, you can leave. Like, well, guess what? It's only been 11 minutes, and everybody's like delighted, right? He saved us 4 minutes, right? It's such a simple but effective trick, and a lot of it is just customer psychology.
I love that story, Jay. I mean, it does remind me, because I worked in the travel industry a lot, how the airlines announce their arrival times. And it is such a cushion of margin for delays, if you will,
Yeah.
within there. Oh,
Oh,
we're on
absolutely.
time. What are you kidding me?
Yeah. What
How,
do you mean
how
by
many?
time? Yeah.
Yeah, how many freaking times have you canceled or something and so forth? You see that. But I mean, the issue is with this time. If you haven't got, it feels like if you don't have artificial intelligence humming already, you're going to be behind the time.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I don't know humming, but certainly, I think certainly you have to have a pathway towards adoption and integration now, or certainly this summer, or you really are going to start falling behind in most industries. You're not going to have it all figured out. You probably never have it all figured out, because the pace of change in AI is rapid enough that I don't know that anybody will ever be able to stay at that pace. But pretty quickly, we're going to start to see haves and have-nots in terms of business performance. There's organizations now that are replacing huge swaths of their customer contact teams with AI, and you'd think, those robots can't do as good of a job as people, and actually the outcomes are as good or better. And I hate to say that, but the rumored job loss and skill retraining is all true. Like, it's going to happen. I really believe that it's going to have manifest consequences for labor in every country, or every developed country. And I think it's going to happen sooner than we anticipate.
Well, you write about speed, but you also say too fast is not
Yeah.
necessarily good.
Yeah.
With you talk
Yeah.
about your enchiladas and all that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I want to. There are a few things I was thinking about, but one is I have a friend who's a person in the United Kingdom who's made a chatbot that is absolutely stunningly amazing. That's won the Loebner Prize, which is essentially the Turing test, something like 6 out of 10 years time.
Well.
And it's amazing chatbot called Kuki, Kuki, and the oddness is that it replies so quickly.
Yeah. Just have to think
So
about it.
yeah, and you therefore know it's not a human being, forgetting the
Mm-hmm.
typing speed.
Mm-hmm.
And that speed of reaction is inauthentic, felt as such. And if you want to, for example, I talk or work a lot around the ideas of a therapeutic AI. And if you want to have a proper engagement, you don't want an immediate answer to everything.
Right.
Just by
Feels
once
fake.
you type in your message, I've got a situation, I'm feeling anxious. So I'm digesting that as I write that. If immediately the bot says, oh, tell me about your anxiety. Well, wait a second, I'm still digesting as I've typed. It might be the right question, but you kind of need to have that human pause. And somehow in our world of high speed interactions, ever going faster, this notion of the almost artificial pause,
Yes.
or maybe chaotic mistakes almost, make for a more real interaction.
No question. It proven to be true. In fact, and I don't think I have it in the book, because I think I discovered it afterwards. But the chatbot company Drift, which is a very large provider of B2B chatbots, maybe the largest, they actually program in an artificial delay in their interactions because they've tested it and they had problems with the cookie example where it was so fast, people's belief in the veracity of the answers plummeted because it was so quick. They knew a human being couldn't conjure it that quickly. They knew nobody could type it that quickly. And so they plugged in a 3-second ellipsis, right? Like dot 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 dot. Oh, somebody's actually thinking about this. They're pondering it. They're typing it. Whatever. And customer satisfaction and sort of trust in the data went up dramatically. So now it's just part of the software. Is they are intentionally doing it more slowly than they had to. And as I've said in the book and other places, like there are scenarios where speed is not the best, right? You don't want to go to the fastest tattoo artist in town. You don't want to go to, you call, you call an eye surgeon to get LASIK, and they're like, what are you doing in the next 5 minutes? Like, well, that's how are you that available? That concerns me, right? So there is this premise we talk about that there's sort of a magic window for responsiveness, and we call it the right now. And the right now is defined as just slightly faster than people expect. Just like, because if you're too fast, they don't trust it. And if you're too slow, they're annoyed. So the middle, the sort of the Goldilocks zone for responsiveness is just slightly faster than they expect. However, as we talked about a moment ago, in order to deploy that, you have to have a sense of what their expectations are. You can't just guess. You got to have a sense for, well, how long does it take? How long would they feel is appropriate? And then just ratchet it up a little bit better than that.
All right, so let's talk about that because I have this in my mind, a story where, I mean, so it comes from a real experience, which was, well, we want to set an expectation for our responses on social media. And the idea was actually it was a website, contact us thing. And we said, well, we're going to set 48 hours. Every time we will come back to within 48 hours. Mm-hmm. But it turned out to be completely unrealistic. And the reason for that is that a lot of the questions that came in, the social media manager managing that contact us would not have the answers, and therefore needed to go to the experts within the company who might have the answers. But those experts wearing long titles and big salaries and rather big egos would say, who are you? Oh, I'm the social media manager. Well, you know what? I have more important things to do than answer your email, little intern. And therefore that 40 hours just doesn't happen unless you have a concerted, configuration that allows for that 48 hours to happen and everyone's aware of it.
Yes.
So there's an internal expectation component, or at least internal cohesion component, in order to be aligned with that external expectation.
Yep. There's a couple ways to get around that or try to address it. One is this technique that we talk about called responding without answers.
Oh yeah, I like that piece.
And so the idea is that today, what typically happens, and not just in a context scenario, but really in your whole life, if somebody has a question or needs something, and if you don't instantly know it, you got to go find out. You look it up, you ask the executive, you do whatever you need to do to conjure the necessary information. And then once you have attained it, then you respond. But we shouldn't do that, because the entire time that you're figuring it out, the person who asked the question is freaking out. And today, it's very common that because we are getting more used to people answering with some degree of rapidity, if you don't get that answer, the assumption isn't often they're working on it. The assumption is they didn't get it, especially with all the different inboxes we have now, right? So this would never happen because you and I correspond. But if I sent you an email today and I didn't hear back for, say, 2 days, what people would start thinking is, oh, do I have Minter's email wrong? Did it go to spam? Did I have an attachment on there? Is he on vacation but didn't set out of office? Is he mad at me? Should I place a phone call, or does that make me seem sad and desperate? You walk down. It's like a Chutes and Ladders shame spiral, and you're like, oh my god, and you like spin yourself into the ground. And meanwhile, everything's cool. Like you got it. You're just working on the answer, but I don't know that. And so the best thing you can do, and I will say, I think I talked about in the book, I've been doing this now for about 3 years in my personal life, uniformly, with my wife, with my kids, with my friends, with the mailman, like everybody responding without answers. So here's how you do it. Somebody asks you something, doesn't matter who it is, and you can't instantly answer. You answer anyway, and you say, thanks very much. I'm going to work on that and I'll get back to you. And then you do it, and then you answer with the information necessary. And two important things happen. One, their perception of your responsiveness goes through the roof because they never have that anxiety of, did he get it? Is he working on it? Because the second you say, I got it, it goes off of their to-do list and they can place it on your to-do list. And the second thing, quick trick, is it actually buys you more time to respond. Because what we've learned in the research around this is that time to response is more important than time to resolution. Because the first one is about psychology and the second one is about information. And once people are satiated, like somebody's going to solve this for me, it just makes a big psychological turn for the good. So it really does work, and I really recommend people try it, not just in business but in their life.
All right, two questions. First is, how do you manage that now ballooning list of to-dos that you've said to everybody, yep, I got you, I'll be back? What's your process for managing that? Because I mean, I know I have a list of things to do, and tacking onto those things excuse me, can become onerous when it's all now it's on me. So do you have a better
well, I don't think it's
system?
actually any more things to do, because my assumption is that you would answer them anyway, right? You would still answer them. It's just you're answering them twice. So the first one is simply, I got it. And then you're going to do what you would have done anyway, which is you will eventually get the answer when you get around to it. So you're essentially just satiating them psychologically and buying yourself more time. Now, if you would have just deleted it anyway and never gotten back to them, well, that's a different story entirely, in a different book. That would be a hug your haters principle, which is you should answer everybody every time.
Yeah, including the haters. But my trick has been to reply and then start the response and leave it in a draft.
Mm.
So if in terms of, depends on where it's coming in, because if it's
Managing it. Yeah.
if it's a WhatsApp, you don't have that option, right?
Yes.
In terms of dealing with the flow back. And when you are trying to respond to people, you want to get back to them in the same channel that they reply to. How important
Absolutely.
is that the key as well?
Critical. It's top 2 or 3 things that customers hate the most. They hate to wait, for sure. That's probably number one. Number two is they hate to be underinformed. Information asymmetry is a huge challenge now, because we're now conditioned to know all the things all the time. But the third one is this idea of channel shifting. And a lot of brands do this strategically. They think it's good policy, or it's more economically effective for them, or what have you. So somebody will it's pretty common in social media. Someone will put a post on a Facebook page and the brand says, great, please call us at. It's like, hey, like if I wanted to call you, I would have called. Like, I know how phones work. It's like I would have chosen. Nobody's picking a contact mechanism on a roulette wheel. Like, all customers, this is universally true. All customers pick the contact mechanism that they prefer and believe will yield the best outcomes. Period. So you saying, oh yeah, I know you purposely selected email, phone, text message, WhatsApp, hostage note, but instead of that, we are going to ask you to use this other channel, or even worse, we are going to unilaterally respond to you in a different channel. Really annoys people, as it should.
All right. So another annoyance, Jay, and it comes back to this notion of the quick response, is Ring, 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 ring. Hi, we are Brand X, and we're very happy to have your call. Thank you for calling us. Your call is important to us. Can you touch one if you want to go into this loop?
Yeah.
Touch two if you want to go into another loop. So I've answered quickly at some level,
Yes.
and you end up in this never-ending loop. You end up with somebody who asks you five questions. Oh, sorry, we need to pass you through to another group very quickly. You get through to the next group, and listen, I need five more responses of the same question. So this notion of efficiency, speed, but there's the effectiveness piece, and
Yep.
I think a lot of companies get that piece wrong as well.
Oh, and there's so many dimensions to that set of errors, right? One is making customers re-enter data, right? Account numbers. That drives people crazy because they know you
Bonkers.
have it. They know you have it, right? You obviously
I
have
just
it.
put it in. I just
You clearly
put
have
it
it.
in.
Right? So that's a big miss. Transferring people in general, unless you dialed the wrong number somehow, right? You messed it up. You didn't listen to the phone tree, whatever. I get it, but anytime you have to transfer somebody for any reason, the satisfaction rates go through the floor. And here's why: customers do not care about your org chart. It's not their problem. If you have a business card with the logo of that company on it, the customer believes, and I think at some level rightfully so, that you should be able to help them. And this idea, like, not our department, not our division, we're going to transfer you around, empower your people to make a decision to help somebody. It just, and I get it at scale, that's difficult in some large enterprise organizations. But I just did a big presentation for a huge global company just last month, and it's one of the things I talked about. Like, let's stop treating this like 160 separate companies, and let's start treating it like one company. And I think your customers will be a lot happier about that.
Yeah, and Jay, that's a great point. It feels like the situation you were just referring to most often happening is because they come into it from a cost cutting
Yeah.
perspective,
Yep.
not a customer centric perspective.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're in a value added perspective, you need to allocate probably some extra resources. Certainly need to delegate more into your team, give them the opportunity to respond and even fuck up, because not everybody has the perfect policy list anymore. You're allowing them to have some sort of overlap with other people.
The one thing I will say about being on a sort of mechanized phone tree that is better than it used to be is, we talked about setting expectations earlier in my airplane example.
Can I just
One,
interrupt? I have a drum roll happening here.
oh, okay, great.
You mean there's something at the end of this one?
Yeah, I know, it's hard to believe. I concur.
Yeah.
But what is better is that in most cases now, companies will tell you, first, first first they always say, if you're going to be on hold, first they always say, and I love this: calls will be answered in the order in which they were received. And I laugh about that every time because I always think, what was the second plan? Like, calls will be answered in order of height, in order of, alphabetized, I guess you could do lifetime value, maybe. I don't know, but I feel like, what other sequence would you use to answer the calls? That was hilarious to me. But the good news, as I teased a moment ago, is that most of the time now, they will tell you estimated hold time is X, right? The estimated hold time is 6 minutes, is 9 minutes, is 14 minutes.
Going back to your airline pilot, Dawn.
Yes.
15
Yeah,
minutes.
absolutely.
Thinking it's going to be 12.
Yes. But at least you got an idea, because you and I are old enough, like, that technology didn't exist, right? So you would be on hold, and it was somewhere between 1 and every minute for the rest of your life. Like, you had literally no idea. Like, should I cancel dinner? Like, what? Like, you didn't know. You literally.
And by the way,
that
does still happen. I mean, my
yes,
golly gosh, right?
Yes, of course. But luckily the technology exists that they can do a phone tree scan and get a sense of how long it might take. And then a lot of times now they'll do that. You want us to call you back, which is also a nice touch, right? So it's not all bad. But it is largely still bad because they view it as a cost, not as a benefit. And Forrester has some really interesting data on this recently. This notion of the customer obsessed company, and I love the way they frame that. And the way to describe it, Minter, you'll like this. They say that customer obsessed companies are focused on providing value to customers instead of extracting value from customers. And I really like that. And the numbers really back it up. They found in a large baseline study that customer obsessed companies have a 300% lower average churn rate. That's real money. 300% lower.
All right, so I want to get the last piece of what we're going to talk about is time, but before that, it just occurred to me that in the methodology of getting an entire organization organized around being customer centric and customer obsessed, communication is key. And I still see, and I wonder how on earth they function, people who have a little banner or badge, sorry, on top of their icon says 1,300 unread messages. Or, some have worse. I
Yes.
mean, I've
Yeah.
seen literally tens of thousands of unread
Yeah.
messages.
Yeah.
I don't know how those people operate, and how many of those unanswered messages, unviewed messages, carry gold in terms of insights, carry customer complaints, or friends and family that you haven't answered. How do you get an organization, I mean, ultimately to have communications within as fast as you want without?
Well, and it's such a good question because one has to beget the other. I talk about this. I didn't talk about it too much in the book because sort of go down
Well, hey,
separate,
Jay,
separate avenues.
Jay, you because you wrote one of the smallest packed
That's
books,
true. I
you
didn't have
can't
time
have
to. I didn't have time
everything
to
in
write it.
there.
It's a good point. It's a good point. I could have included it in a regular sized book, but I did not. But this idea that it is nigh impossible to be fast externally unless you are first fast internally, because in many cases, uh, what's holding up your ability to get the customer or the potential customer what they need is some sort of sticky wicket inside the business, right? I can't get a price from the estimator guy. I can't get a date from service. I can't get a part from the parts people. I can't figure out where the invoice is from accounting. It's always some sort of internal kerfuffle that prevents you from being as fast as you want to be, even if you want to be. So you've got to sand down all these sticky edges inside the company, um, because otherwise you can do all the things I'm talking about, but it won't really work because you'll just be sitting around waiting for other people in the business to execute what you need to do your job.
Well, I must give you a hat tip for having a cricket analogy
Oh,
in the
my,
midst of all that.
I'm here to, I'm here to keep it relevant.
Hey, and global.
I can't explain the rules very well, but I can use the metaphor.
Well, it depends if it's a 5 days or 20 overs and
Well,
lots
who's
of
got the
crazy.
time? I mean, the books
Uh,
are called "The Time to Win."
oh
No one's playing
no!
5 day cricket
All
reading
right,
that book.
so let's just finish
Five
a
day
little bit
test, I
about,
should say. I believe is the correct.
indeed, good word, good word. Time. I have a general principle, which is the way you view and manage time is who you are. And so let's talk about a meal, you know. Should it be the 15-minute sandwich or the 1.5 hour glass of wine sandwich? And if you think about time, there was the Concorde that used to fly at,
Yeah,
at sonic speeds.
I heard they're bringing it back. I don't know if that's true, but
Well, I've heard so too, and I would love for that to happen. It was a glorious experience to be on it. And then there's slow time when you go to certain number of luxury stores where there's no one's in a rush. You're there to be taken time. Would
yeah,
you like a cup of tea? How would you like? Would like green tea? I'll go make that. It's going to take
right,
5 minutes.
right. Yeah,
I'm going to go kill the cow before
yep,
I serve you the beef.
yep.
And slow time, which is also a tremendous luxury. I was wondering how you sort of put that into the mix. I mean, you do talk about too fast is not
Yeah,
always good,
yeah, I
but
think
sometimes slow is useful.
no doubt. Uh, if and only if that's the expectation. And that's why setting the expectation is so critically important, um, because you are in charge of how the elapsed time is perceived by how people contextualize what it is that they're getting from you, and why they're getting it from you, etc. Where it gets all messed up is when you expect slow and you get fast, and they give you instant green tea, or you expect fast and you get slow, which probably happens more often.
Mm.
So that's why it is really important. Yes, the bias of the book, because this is the nature of the world we live in, the bias of the book and the work is to be faster most often, and there's business reasons for that. More than 50% of customers will hire whomever contacts them first, regardless of price. More than a
Mm.
half. Well, that being the case, you have to ask yourself, is my business architected for that to happen? For us to always be fastest? For us to be the first responder amongst all our competitors? And if we're not architected that way, why not exactly? So, yes, the bias is to be faster, but that's a dramatic oversimplification of the idea of time to win, because you can definitely succeed and outperform competitors by being the slowest in your industry, as long as the customers know that's going to happen and of course value it commensurately.
Yeah, and the challenge, just to go your way, Jay, is figuring that out. And we, at the very beginning,
Yeah.
we talked about empathy and the listening. And in order to have the data, which might be able to understand your expectation, especially when you're in luxury, because these are
Mm-hmm.
individuals who are obviously very taxed in terms of their time and people
Yep.
and when they come into the store, you need to be able to figure out quite instantly what signals they're giving. So there's like
Yes.
this radar. Uh-oh, this is a hurried Jay.
Yeah.
I know yesterday he came in for 2 hours, but I can see he's looking sweaty and worried or this and that. He needs the ring right away.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So to have that kind of a radar, which is maybe a more subtle version, maybe more in a luxury environment. I don't know how you
It's
answer
totally
that.
doable. It's actually been done. It was probably, geez, I'll bet you it's a decade ago now, at Best Buy, the electronics retailer in the States. It was under a former CMO, but this whole idea of that they serve a very broad swath of consumers just because of the nature of their presence in the market. And exactly to your point, they realize that like we can't treat everybody the same. And so I forget which consultants they use, but a very significant project to develop, I think it was five, it might have been six customer segments and personas. And then they trained all their retail staff, the blue shirts, what questions to ask. So someone walks up to them in an aisle and they asked, two or three kind of magic questions, and the answer to that magic question equals they're in segment ABC, the busy mom, the
Mm.
luxury shopper, the whatever. And then they would literally sell and service those customers differently based on the answer to those questions, which is clearly like holy grail stuff, right? For retail. I
No
mean, that is
shit.
that is exactly what we should be doing. And it failed miserably, uh, because the people who were working retail at Best Buy are there for 6 months and out. Most cases, they're very young. It's many cases their first job ever in retail or their first job, period. They didn't have the human capital to execute on it. Like the tactics couldn't match the strategy. But from a strategy standpoint, mwah, chef's kiss. Do more of
Mm.
that, please.
Well, brilliant. I think the idea there is, as usual with Jay Baer, is to have pragmatic solutions that are real and successful because it's nothing worse than really having this ideals and wish lists that will fall flat in their face and then we go home very unhappy. Jay
Yeah.
Baer, always pleasure to listen to you.
Thanks so much.
I love the way you responded to this stuff. I very much, I have to say, as I told you before we started recording, when I opened your book and I laughed out loud because it was a much shorter and easy book to read, and I finished it quickly. Lots of great stuff in it. How can people get in touch with you, hire you, get you into speak? Because you
Thanks.
are a bundle of energy,
I appreciate
and
it.
get your book or any of your other books or any other
Yeah,
work.
thanks. Jbaer.com, Baer. Jbaer.com is the main website. All things speaking and writing and so forth. The book itself you can find in all the places that you can get books, Amazon, etc. And the website is thetimetoWin.com. You can get the book there. You can
Speaking
also
of
get
which,
the research that we conducted for the book. All of that is yours for the taking. There's all kinds of graphics and infographics and videos and everything else. So please just take it, enjoy it. We want people to put these principles into practice. But yes, it is a
so
very short book, but that was on purpose, right? I really, because I didn't mean for it to be so short. I started to write a full size business book, and I got about a third of the way through, and I'm like, wait a second, the book is all about speed. I can't make people spend 6 hours reading a book about speed. That doesn't make any sense at all. So I wrote the world's shortest business book, and I will tell you, people love it because they actually read it and they don't just skim it. So far, so good.
well, I so appreciate that. Jbaer.com, thetimetoWin.com. Little hat tip to my lovely friend Sophie Devonshire, who also wrote a book about speed, but hers is a hardback and about 300 pages. Also worthwhile reading.
I'm
But
sure.
I'm going to send everybody to check out your book, Jay. Thanks for coming
Thank
on my
you.
show. Great to chat with you.
Great to see you.